Hi, I'm Chuck Gibson. This is a sports special presentation of Loveland Beacon Talks. Today, we welcome back Evagoras Papasavvas to talk Indy Car racing. The 15-year-old Loveland High School sophomore just completed his first full season of Indy Car racing in the USF 2000 Championship Series. He may not have his driver's license yet. He doesn't turn 16 until December. But he already earned his first race victory in July and placed fourth overall in the Driver Points Championship for the 2023 USF Pro Championship racing season. It is my pleasure to welcome back Loveland's own Indy race car driver, Evagoras Papasavvas. Welcome again, Evagoras Papasavvas.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
It's great to have you back again on now Loveland Beacon Talks Special Sports Edition. Mm-hmm. We're talking Indy Car racing with Loveland's own Evagoras Papasavvas, who, now as we're sitting here recording this on September 11th, Monday afternoon, you've been in school today.
Yeah.
Sophomore year. Mm-hmm. At Loveland High School. So that's the thing, folks. If you're listening, Evagoras Papasavvas, 15 years old, going to be 16 in December.
Yep.
A sophomore at Loveland High School, and just completed essentially your third season with the J. Howard Racing, Indy Racing team, yes? Second year of racing.
Yeah, like kind of 1.5. I did half a year last year. So first full year. So the first half of the year, I was learning all the new tracks and such, but yeah, then the second half of the year I was able to build on my knowledge I had previously from last year. So yeah.
Well, again, as we sit here September 11th, you just completed this first full season of racing for you. And when I say three, you joined the J. Howard team and were doing testing, at 13 years old.
Yeah.
But you have to be 14 to actually race. So you didn't do any racing that first year of testing. And then, as you said, last year, the first half of the season you were learning things, and then the second half you were on the race courses.
Yeah.
And so that's what lent itself to experience for you this season as you got to places like Mid-Ohio again and things like that. But as we're sitting here September 11th, we know you just concluded the season on Labor Day weekend in Portland, Oregon. So let's start with that. Let's start with that last weekend, and then we'll go back, from the last time we talked, you were just getting ready to go to Lucas Oil track, which was at the end of May. But we'll go back right now just to Labor Day weekend at Portland. And you're battling for a top 3 spot in the season point standings, the point championship. So tell me a little bit about race weekend. You had 3 races at Portland, right?
Yeah.
So tell the listeners a little bit about how things went at Portland for you.
Well, so Portland, it wasn't much of worrying about if I finished first, second, or third, and where I come out right in the races. I still do want. I always have that. I still want to finish first, like everyone else does. Sure. But most of my focus was just on beating the guys that were around me in the championship, because that's what mattered. It being the last event, so the last 3 races of the season, just focusing on beating the guys around me. At the time, going into the weekend, I was 5th, so I was focusing on beating the two guys in front of me to get me to 3rd in the championship. And I went. We ended up finishing 4th. So, we got one of them and was able to hold them off for the rest of the weekend. But we were a little bit too far back to get 3rd in the championship. But that's okay, because that's, sometimes racing goes like that.
Well, folks, when you're listening right now, Evagoras is a little bit humble. And I'm going to ask him to be, just pat yourself on the back a little bit. Race number 1. And like you did say, the focus clearly was to maintain position ahead of those guys that were currently ahead of you in the point standing, to try to move up from 5th into that 3rd podium spot in the points championship, or even beyond if possible. But that didn't change your focus in terms of once you were behind the wheel, and the green flag drops, and now you're racing. So in race number 1, you got a pretty darn good result at Portland. Tell us, what was the finish for race number 1?
Yeah, so race number 1, it was race number 1 started 5th, qualified 5th, and I started 5th for all 3 races. So started 5th race 1, and then by the start, so I think by the time we got to the second corner, I got myself into the 3rd position. So already gained 2 spots, already got myself onto the podium. And then 2 guys in front of me, they were not in the championship for me. They were either behind me, like way behind me, or way in front of me.
Right.
So they weren't in the championship for me. But as I said before, I still want to gain position. I still want to do as best as I could. So throughout the race, trying my best to stay with 1st and 2nd place. And when I found the opportunity was right after one of the restarts, after a yellow flag, we got going again after one of the restarts.
Yeah.
I was able to make a lunge to the inside of turn 1 in Portland, Oregon, Portland International Raceway, and I was able to get 2nd position.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the race, I was just trying to maintain that 2nd position. I had defended the attacks of the 3rd place guy behind me, trying to get the position back.
Sure.
But ended up finishing 2nd, and I like to think to myself that one more lap and I would have got 1st place.
Yeah.
The last few laps I was getting really close every lap. But still happy to finish 2nd in race 1.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm glad you mentioned that. Maybe one more lap and you'd have got it. Because I think when I was looking at the results myself, I mean that's like a fraction of a second, or just a couple of seconds. It wasn't. It was like a fraction of a second between you and the 1st place. The 1st place finisher. I was like,
Yeah, it was close.
Trust me, the folks here in Loveland and myself, anybody that's read about you, heard about you here in town, was like, doggone it. But 2 up on the podium in race 1, that's a great start to the weekend. And everybody that you're contending with to move up in the point standings, was back behind you. That 2nd place finish, did that surge you into that 4th spot right then and there?
Yeah, it was the 2nd place that did initially get me into the 2nd.
Yeah.
And it was the 2nd place that got me into the 4th position. Yeah.
Right. So now you're going into race 2, and I know we've talked off the air, so to speak, a little bit. Car wasn't as good, engine wasn't as good for race 2, and ultimately race 3 in Portland. So that great start. Tell us a little bit about 2nd race. The 2nd race you finished
5th.
5th. Started 5th.
Yeah.
Now here's a quick question too, Evagoras. I wasn't sure. So you qualified 5th before the 1st race. Does that give you the 5th spot for the entire race weekend, or do you qualify for each race?
So the format was wherever you qualify in the 1st race. That's wherever you qualify. That's where you start for the 1st race.
Right.
But I believe it's like your 2nd fastest lap is where you start for the 2nd race, and then 3rd race for 3rd fastest lap. But the way that everyone did their laps, it was the exact same. So I started 5th for every race and everyone. It might have been a little bit different towards the back, but I know that around where I was, I started 5th for all the races.
Yeah, all the drivers that were competing in those points championships had a similar outcome for you. I'll throw this in before we talk about that 2nd race and what was going on with the car and the engine for you for that 5th place finish. I wanted to say, because I always enjoy top speed. do you recall what your top speeds were? I can look it up real fast while we're sitting here, but do you remember your top? I get a kick out of This is again, folks. This is this 15-year-old high school sophomore, and I'm trying to think what were you 100 and what was it? Do you remember?
Well, in Portland, I'm not sure what the average mile per hour was throughout the lap, the average, but if I would like to guess, probably the top speed there, maybe 130 or so, around 130. So,
I'm looking fastest. It's not showing fastest speed, it's showing
The average.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were. And again, still think about this. So 96. So 97 miles per hour.
It's the average. Yeah, the average speed around the track. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was. And of course, going back again, just a quick reminder, because we talked about this the last time we talked, for the people that are listening who haven't been following and don't know. So it's a 25-lap race.
Yeah.
And of course, in each of the 3 races at Portland, you completed all 25 laps, and which is always nice to get a finish.
Yeah.
Regardless, obviously, it's nice to get a finish 1, 2, or 3, but start off. Let's finish the race.
Yeah.
So let's go back again. Just touch on real quick. So that second race at Portland, after a great finish in the first one, and almost almost right there to take the checkered flag and win it. You go into that second race, had to be feeling confident, had to be feeling good, and then what was the deal with the car and the engine for you in race 2?
Yeah, so I was feeling pretty good, just trying to gain more positions or maintain my position. But yeah, it was literally like a few minutes before I would get in the car. I was getting all my gear on and everything, and then I got news that there's like a problem with the engine that sounded really bad. So what we did was the car itself was fine. It was just an engine issue. But so what we did is we pushed the car up to the pre-grid, which is where all of us grid while we wait for them to open the pit lane for us to go in there. So we all went to pre-grid, and the car was silent. We just pushed it up there to do the least amount of running time on the engine.
Yeah.
So and then when we got to pre-grid and it was time for us to go to the pit lane, that's when we finally started the engine, and it sounded really bad. It sounded like a tractor, sputtering, and it sounded really bad. So, and of course in the pre-grid you get all like the mechanics and everyone around. They just all look at you because they hear that something's wrong with your car.
Yeah. So that's like the other team's racers. Yeah. They're all looking over like, wow, that's no fun.
So we ended up pushing it still with the engine on just to get it going. Put less stress on the engine. And then I shut it off in the pit lane, started it up again to go out onto the track, and it still sounded like a tractor for about maybe the first, maybe 3/4 of the warm-up lap.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it sounded fine, sounded normal.
Nice.
So I was like, okay, it's
that
fine.
has to be a good feeling right there.
Yeah, good that it sounds normal, but it didn't feel right. Like when I would get on the throttle, it didn't have the oomph that it normally does. So I was basically running on 3 cylinders instead of 4 the entire race, so way underpowered compared to everyone else. But I was still able to keep the 5th position. The car felt really good, handling wise. So I was able to keep the 5th position. But yeah, it was just really frustrating because I would catch them up into the corners, but then right when we get to the straightaway, they just pull away. And it's just really frustrating because you're faster in the corners, but you can't pass them.
Well, what's the for you that becomes, as you said, the car doesn't have the power that it normally has. So right off the bat, you're starting 5, like you said, you wanted to maintain that position and you wanted to protect that notch that you moved up in the point standings from up into that 4th spot. You want to protect that, and you want to at least hold your spot in the race. That becomes a strategy race. That's like a different mindset from the word go, knowing okay, my engine's not going to give me this. So what I'm trying to say, get you to tell me, Evagoras, what's the mindset and strategy at that point for you when that race starts?
Yeah, so it was a little bit different because I was just focusing on, just try to stay somewhat close to the guys in front and just hope that they make a mistake and you can take advantage of that mistake.
Yeah.
Or, a crash happens and you can take advantage of it. And also to just maintain the position and try your best to not let anyone behind you pass.
Yeah.
So, I was still able to do that, not let anyone pass, which is very important for the championship. But I was not able. There was no mistakes made, no crashes, so I wasn't able to pass anyone. So finished 5th, but it was still pretty solid for the championship. As I was in front. I finished in front of the guy who was behind me in the championship.
Right.
But I finished behind the guy who was in front of me in the championship.
Right.
So it all kind of stayed the same. I had more of a gap advantage on the guy behind than I did before, but I also lost some to the guy in front.
Right.
So it really all came down to race 3.
Yeah, which let's go right to race 3 when it comes down to that. Same engine. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, no. It was a different engine.
Right.
But so we swapped engines, but we still think that it wasn't as good as the other one we had before.
In race 1.
Right. Yeah. Because of what happened. It's the end of the season, so like the supply on the engines. It's kind of like, they have less supply of the engines, it being the end of the season.
Right.
They used all of them. So, it was only for one race. So the engine wasn't as good, we think. But, I tried my best, tried everything that I could. Ended up finishing 6th that race, which I did still end up finishing in front of the guy behind me in the championship.
Right.
So I was still able to finish 4th in the championship. But yeah, there's still the same guy in front of me. He still finished in front of me. So yeah, it was a little bit more of a gap, but finished 4th in the championship.
Which again brings us to here we are, the end of your first full season, and you're like a tick off being on that top 3 in the points championship, just a tick off in your first season, your first full season. And again, I don't like to dwell on it, but we have to. At age 15, that's pretty. It's got to be a pretty good feeling for you.
Yeah, it is pretty good knowing that I finished 4th. But the goal was to win the championship this year.
Yeah.
That was the goal, so we can get that scholarship money to move up and continue my career. But yeah, so it was a little bit frustrating, knowing that I didn't fully accomplish the goal. But still, 4th place isn't bad, and still hoping that we get some funding to continue into next year. Which next year would, after finishing 4th this year, next year it really is championship or nothing.
Wow.
So we are really going to win the championship next year.
So that was going to be my question. Is so like what's next without that championship this season? So where do you stand with the Jay Howard team, and where do you stand with going forward into next season?
Yeah, I still want to continue with the team. I want to continue in this series. I want to continue going up this ladder, following my passion. So yeah, that's really the goal for me is just to do it all over again next year.
And the Jay Howard team, of course, welcomes you on board still, or are those talks?
I hope so.
You haven't heard anything different?
No, I haven't heard. I think it's good.
It's good. Okay.
Yeah, it's good.
I don't want to put you on the spot there, but it's like like you said, it's a little frustrating when the goal is this, and it's a great result in your first full season, but at the same time, you're driving for a championship, and in all honesty, we always say, well, who remembers who finished second?
Right.
Nobody remembers that guy.
Yeah.
Or 3rd or 4th. It's who won at the end of the day. But so that's a good segue, at least in my opinion. That's a good segue. You did win this year. You got your first race win, and that was Mid Ohio. Yes.
Yeah.
So take us through that day for getting that first race victory. And I'm going to ask you to reach back and really share. I see you smile. This is great. I love to see that smile happening, Evagoras. That had to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So just what do you remember about race day at Mid Ohio and winning?
Yeah, so Mid Ohio, and if I remember the schedule correctly, I think because it was race 1, so we did practice, qualifying, and race all in one day. So we had a short 30-minute practice session that day, and actually it was going pretty smoothly until I went around the last corner and a small part broke on the front right of my car, I believe. So I basically lost all steering capability in the front right. So it was really weird because all of a sudden I hit a bump going out of a corner in the last corner, as normal. That's what that's how the track is. There's that bump there, and
Right.
you take it.
Yeah.
I hit that bump, and all of a sudden just couldn't turn. So thankfully it was a slow corner.
Yeah.
The last corner at Mid Ohio, it was a fairly slow corner, so the impact wasn't too crazy, but it still had some slight damage to the car. But yeah, so I hit the tire barrier, and in that moment I was just sitting in my car. I was really confused,
Yeah.
because I just remember losing steering,
Yeah.
not being able to turn. So, we get that fixed, very small part, so we get it fixed. The car's all ready, we get going for qualifying. And during the qualifying session, my radio headset wasn't working very well. So, the radio...
Well, you're just having all kinds of fun to start the day here, aren't you?
Yeah, the radio headset wasn't working too well, so I wasn't able to hear the team call me in for a pit stop to get new tires. During the qualifying session, as that's what the strategy was, to start on new tires, and then about halfway, go back on new tires again. As the track evolves, the track gets better, more grip, to go faster. So I couldn't hear them call me in. So then it was, I just heard, most of the time I just heard like crackling over the radio. So I tried to make out what I thought it was, which I thought they were calling me in. It was quite late, but at least I did make it to the pits.
Yeah.
So then I made it to the pits, we changed tires, and there was like only a minute or two left in the session.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I only had like a lap or two left.
I was going to say, what's the normal time at Mid Ohio for a lap? I mean, 40.
I think it's
seconds.
around maybe like a minute 20, minute 25, from in that window, minute 20 to a minute 25, somewhere in that window. So I was only able to do like one or two laps. And so going across the line at Mid Ohio, I actually, on the very last lap, so when everyone thought it was done, on the very last lap, I actually set the fastest lap time.
Yeah.
On the very last lap, so literally right at the last second, I set the fastest lap time, which put me on pole position to start first for the race. Although it's not done yet, because when they were looking at the video, the series looks at all the video from all the drivers to see if they can see anything that's like unfair, whatever. And apparently, they threw the checkered flag right before I crossed the line. So that means that the session was over, and that next lap that I did, which was my fastest lap, that didn't count.
Yeah.
So they actually gave me a penalty, so I had to start down in third, right? Which isn't too bad. But knowing that we could have started
that's not
first,
the pole.
Yeah, exactly. yeah. Knowing that we could have started first and we didn't.
Yeah. Well, how do you line up? So I mean, just so the people listening can understand. So, if it's 1, 2, 3, you're still in the first row. But you guys don't. You guys, what you line up 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah, it's 2 rows.
Right. Yeah.
So it's first place is always on the inside.
Right.
Then second place, and then third place. So
Pole
I was
position
behind.
inside. The guy that was second was on the outside of the first row, and you were on the inside of the second row.
Yeah, so I was behind first place.
Right.
So we started the race, started third, and by the first corner I was able to get myself into second, because what I did was I just followed the leader through turn 1, and second place got really... Turn 1 at Mid Ohio is a very fast corner, and very limited with margins.
Yeah.
So second place got out into the dirty part of the track, so we had way less grip than anyone else. So I was able to just follow first place through that corner and get myself into second. And then we go over to the second corner of the first lap. It's called the Keyhole. That's the name of the corner. So we go over there, first place defense to the inside. So basically he's blocking the inside. And to make it harder for me to pass.
Right.
So then I go my car to the outside, right, because that's the only space available, and I go in deeper on the brakes than him. So basically I brake later than him. So when he brakes, I just wait a little bit longer and then I brake. So if you can imagine that in your head, I kind of go in front of him, going into the corner because I brake
Just
later.
slightly surge ahead.
Right, yeah.
Because he's braking.
Brake later, right, yeah.
And you're outside of him.
Yeah, so I'm on the outside. So throughout the entire corner, we're all centimeters apart from hitting each other, in a disaster. So it was really close. I was able to get him around the outside of the corner, which is pretty difficult because the inside is the shortest distance around the track, and I was also on the outside it's slightly dirty, whatever. So I was really just fighting it, trying to stay there. But I did end up getting him. But it wasn't like right out of the corner I got him. It was more like halfway down the straight because we were still pretty much side by side coming out of the corner.
Yeah.
But I was able to get him.
I mean, you guys were racing.
Yeah. It was really wheel to wheel, like centimeters apart. Yeah. So, but then for the rest of the race, I was leading. I led every lap, but they weren't easy laps. P2 was right behind me every single lap, putting the pressure on me and really like challenging me both mentally and physically. Don't make any mistakes. And just keep going forward. And I was able to stay in front the entire time. Although on the very last lap, that's when it got really close, and he did get in front of me for probably a split second.
Yeah. But
he was on the outside, so I was on the inside, so I was able to get back in front of him. And then end up. The last lap was really a crazy lap, but after all of that, I was able to finish first in my, and take my first win.
That's that jumping out of the seat at the end of it, out of the cockpit, so to speak, and was there a little fist pump?
Yeah,
I hope so.
Yeah,
I wish I'd have been there. I told you. When I looked at things that weekend, I was like, why am I not at Mid-Ohio? I should have been there to watch that.
Yeah.
So I was very excited for that great result for you. So, like you said, a little fist pump. What a great feeling when you got him early. And then, just watching you right now while we're talking, as you're describing it, that was a race. Was that a 25 lap also?
No, so they do it based on, so they have like an allotted amount of time,
right?
And based on the lap time, you do as many laps as you can do, to fit it in that time.
Yeah.
So I don't quite remember how many laps. Were there maybe 20 or so?
Yeah. In my mind, I was like, was that an 18 or a 20 lap?
Maybe 18, but so around there.
But still.
Yeah, so every single lap,
for basically 18 laps. I love your description just now, Evagoras, talking about it, and again, I get to sit across from you right now. People don't get to do that, and see. I can see the intensity while you're sharing the story about it challenged you, and I love that. It challenged you mentally and physically. The physical presence of the automobile and protecting that's or the race car. I don't want to say automobile, but the physical presence of the race car on the track and the position, but as well as mentally of being aware of what you need to do, because that guy was right there putting pressure on you throughout. And then, what's that like when you you maintain that lead and you get to that last lap, and for a brief second or whatever, he just surges a little bit ahead, and you're like, that has to be a moment of, I am not giving this up.
Yeah, that's exactly what was going through my head. When he got in front of me, I said in my mind that I was not going to give this up.
Yeah.
And I, really tried my hardest to get back in front of him, and we did actually end up making contact.
Oh, wow.
But it was all fair, really tough, hard racing, but all fair. And I was just very determined to get that win, the win that I deserved. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the first one.
Yeah.
So, as the season goes on, was there any other race victories?
No, that was the only race victory. Yeah.
So, savored that one.
Yeah.
All season long. Looking forward to that first one next year.
Oh yeah.
For sure, and hopefully many more to come.
Yep.
So, we kind of went through some specifics of that final race weekend at Portland, and then obviously that great race victory at Mid-Ohio. But in your words, just sum up the season that brought you to this, this fourth place finish in the standings, without going through, every single thing. A lot of different racetracks. How did that experience from last year, that you mentioned to me when we were talking a little bit about at the start of this, the second half of the season last year is what you raced. So those courses this year, you're back again. How did that experience really play for you and give you any advantages? That knowledge from having been on those courses last year.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of the things that I learned last year was kind of just basic stuff. It being my rookie season, so this year with more experience with both the car, the series, just everything about car racing. I was really able to focus on the small little details that really make a big difference in racing. So I think that's why when you look back at my results last year, my results this year, of how much they've changed, is just because of those small little details that mean a lot in racing. But yeah, it was just really good to see those tracks again, knowing what to expect. Although some tracks slightly changed, like I believe Road America was repaved. See, the surface you're racing on is different, which changes a lot more than you think. A lot about the car, a lot about the racing, lap time, etc. So a bunch of
the setup and everything, right?
Yeah. So setup, just a bunch of things. Yeah.
What? So now that you've been through that full season on every course, and some of those courses it was the second time around for you, you got a favorite course right now?
I've always liked street courses.
Right.
I think both street courses are pretty much my favorite. I really like St. Petersburg and Toronto. Both of those street courses I really like.
I was thinking Toronto was pretty good for you this year too, wasn't it?
We were fast there, although the races just didn't come in our favor.
Yeah. Not the good finishes you were looking for. No. Not as good results. But
yeah,
I was thinking. After I said that, I was thinking you had some good practice runs and some good qualifying in Toronto.
Yeah, in Toronto, the first practice I was P1, and then in qualifying I was also P1.
Yeah.
But yeah, both races just didn't go my way. Sometimes that's how racing is. So we move on.
But I was going to say at a certain point, it's that's racing.
Yeah.
So, well, it's been 2023. That's racing for Evagoras.
Yeah.
For Evagoras Racing. What are obviously the number one goal remains the same, and that's like win the championship.
In
2024, and you'll be back out there, as we talked about. I know 2023 isn't completely over because in a couple of weeks, and again, as we speak today and record this session, it's September 11th. But in a couple of weeks, you'll be back at Indianapolis doing testing.
Yep.
And so that's what's next, I guess. Tell us a little bit about, what will testing be? What's the object of testing? Is that like, okay, we're really starting to get prepared for 2024? Or?
Yeah, so testing now, it's just to keep learning, right?
Yeah.
Just keep learning, keep finding those small little details. And now that it's the testing, you can explore more. You can have that freedom to explore because you're not, under the pressure of it better work because it's a race. So if it doesn't work, it's going to be, you'll be really slow. It's going to be a disaster.
You just learn from it.
Yeah. So that's why testing is really important for us. I think Indianapolis is in 2 days. So we spent 2 days there, just doing a bunch of different things with the car, learning a bunch of new things that could mean a lot. And actually, for next season, we will no longer be racing on the Cooper tire.
Oh, wow.
We will be racing on Continental tires. So new tire brand, which means a lot. It's not just the name that's different. It's going to mean a lot of how the tire is, how the tire fades, how it reacts to certain inputs. So, and that will ultimately change the most.
Well, that's an interesting
from this season to next season.
That's an interesting piece of insight. Like when you throw in, because I think people listening, myself included, sitting here across from your Evagoras, the tire fades. Okay, so my mind says when you're talking about it loses its grip, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
How a tire fades?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, people listening, it's like, what tire fades? What does that mean?
Yeah. So if you like to imagine it like on a graph, when you get the new tires, for a very short period of time, they're not very good, and that's because they're cold tires. So you have to scrub the new coating they have on them,
right?
And whatever. But then the first actual lap, there's a big peak, and that's of grip. They're very grippy. very fast. So that's when, for qualifying, we go on new tires. And at certain tracks, you'd see the fastest lap is the first lap, because that's where the most grip is. And then they start to fall off. They have quite a dramatic fall off, and then they sort of plateau for like the rest of the session. Like for quite a long period of time, they plateau, and then they really fall off, and that's like when we don't even use them anymore.
That's the fade.
Yeah, normally we would change them when like a little bit into the plateau. Because it's not useful anymore to use them. But we rarely get to the point where they like completely fall off, and there's no point.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to ask you this one or not, but why the change from Cooper to
Money, business.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah,
so that's simple.
That's what most things is with racing. The marketing and business is just as important as the actual driving with racing.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's the money, business. It's very, very important in racing.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And on that note, as we get ready to close off, the conversation today, and right off the bat, I want to tell you again, Evagoras, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us here on Loveland Beacon Talks. But I do want to say, you talk about the money in the business, and so for Evagoras Racing, sponsors are key. So
very important.
Who do you want to say thank you as you're closing out 2023? Who are the people that have been key for Evagoras Racing in the 2023 season?
Yeah, so I'd like to thank Tiger Natural Gas, Bodywise International, Matisse Paris, Evagoras Enterprises, HOB Investments, and Gutswear Racing, and Airs Elite Sports Vision. And really just everyone that helps me, and also my family as well.
Oh, yeah.
Thank my family,
you better.
My friends, everyone that supports me, and also the team. The team's been very supportive, very thankful to have a good team like this. So, everyone that's just been helping me continue my dreams.
Perfect. Well, and I know, again, on that business aspect, all those that you thanked, and the many more that you're hoping will join up. Yeah. So there's opportunities for people to become a part of it. Yeah. So I'm going to share that information after you and I are done talking. You'll share some of that, and I'll put that into the story and let people know if you're interested in becoming a part of the Evagoras Racing. There's opportunities for that. But again, Evagoras, at the end of the day, listen, congratulations.
Thank you.
On a great, not rookie season, but on a great first full season.
Yep.
And looking forward to talking to you some more. And one little quick, I'll give people a little tease. We've got something coming up here in Loveland for all of you folks here in Loveland listening.
Yeah.
There's going to be a nice meet and greet where Evagoras is going to be making a personal appearance. And I'm confident I can say right now it's going to be at Paxton's. We don't have a date and time, so stay tuned. And we'll share that information with you, but you'll get a chance to meet this young man at Paxton's. And again, just one more time, Evagoras, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. We appreciate it.
That was up-and-coming Indy race car driver Evagoras Papasavvas. Be sure to join us to meet and greet Evagoras in person at Paxton's Grill Saturday, October 14th from 5 to 7 p.m. It's your chance to get to know more about this young Indy race car driver up close and personal. All are welcome. More details yet to come. This has been a sports special presentation of Loveland Beacon Talks. I'm Chuck Gibson, saying thanks for listening here on Loveland Beacon. Loveland Beacon Talks is a presentation of Loveland Beacon Digital Media and Gibson Communications, LLC.